Da 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 da. Yeah, that was one of the. It was me humming one of the music tracks for this show because I'm afraid if I put the actual music track, you know how YouTube can get with its copyright infringement, especially with audio tracks. So hopefully that'll be enough to, you know, get past that. Though who knows? For all I know, and the way YouTube is these days, I'll probably have to re-upload this without this opening sequence. But yeah. So, Spartacus, the TV show, flagship show for Starz Entertainment. Their first TV show. And it basically tells a highly fictionalized account of the Third Civil War, which was the largest and most successful slave uprising in the history of Rome. Probably the largest and most successful slave uprising in human history. If anyone knows of a slave rebellion that was bigger and more successful, let me know. I'm not an expert historian, so if they know something, let me know and I'll stand corrected. But yeah, so basically, the whole thing about the Third Civil War was Spartacus was a Thracian who at one point had served in the Roman auxiliary, and then had been enslaved and became a gladiator. Then eventually led a huge rebellion that eventually a huge slave army or former slave army of up to, I believe, around over 100,000 people. And yep, it was eventually of course the slave uprising was crushed. So once Rome at first underestimated them, but eventually got its act together, had the right people and enough actual trained soldiers, and eventually defeated them in open battle. And it was a shame, but it is a very, very fascinating story. I'd recommend anyone with any even a passive interest in that kind of stuff look it up. And also, I don't know if any of you guys have seen the original movie from 1960 starring Kirk Douglas, directed by Stanley Kubrick. That is a really good movie. It's a very dated movie, but it's still worth watching. Slow, yes, but like I said, in fact, I strongly recommend you watch that movie before you watch this show. But yeah. Now, anyway, the show itself is definitely based on actual historical events, but as I also said before, just like the original movie, it is highly fictionalized because, unfortunately, the only actual historical accounts of Spartacus and the war are all from the Romans' perspective. So, you know, history is written by the victors, so that's all we have to go on. And really, nothing is really known about Spartacus before the actual rebellion took place. In fact, some people even say that Spartacus wasn't actually a person; he was just a composite of several different leaders of the slave army. And because and also Spartacus itself is actually apparently sounds like a Thracian, actually has royal Thracian ties, so it's very possible that they just kind of came up with that name for him, and that may not have been his real name. In fact, the actual show itself, it basically just kind of says that is not his real name, and we never actually find out what his real name is in the show. But yeah. Now, despite the fact that this show is based on historical events, it is an action exploitation show first and foremost. There's at least one big graphic fight scene and one big graphic sex scene in every single episode, and there is a lot of nudity and blood. So, in fact, if you watch Game of Thrones and you think that is a show that has a lot of gore and nudity and sex, you have not seen this show. So, if this show is not for the faint of heart, and if hardcore exploitation is not your thing, then I guess you probably not want to check out the show. But despite that, though, the show has enough cool action in it that I would advise you at least give it a serious watch for the first few episodes to see what you think. The first episode of the series is not that good, but it gets really good from there. Now, basically the whole first season. Oh, wait. One thing I definitely need to get out of the way first is that the actor who plays the titular character, Spartacus, in the first season, Andy Whitfield, very good actor. He was really good in it. Unfortunately, he passed away after the first season. He non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He was first they weren't sure if he was how bad it was, but he eventually claimed his life, and they eventually replaced him the actor. They eventually replaced his character with a new actor, Liam McIntyre, in the second and third seasons. A lot of people don't like him, new actor. I think he's good. I can get why a lot of people can't go over the fact that it's a different actor. I get that, but in the end, I was able to get with it. In fact, even Andy Whitfield himself actually gave the creator of the show, Stephen S. Knight, and Liam McIntyre himself personally called him and gave him his blessing before he passed away, and was glad that the show was continuing. So that's props to Andy Whitfield. Rest in peace. I mean, he's an awesome guy. It's a shame we never got to see him in more stuff. But you got to give him credit for that, though. You got to give him credit for go ahead just saying that, like. But yeah. Now the whole first season was pretty much just Spartacus basically becoming enslaved and becoming a gladiator and getting separate. His wife is also enslaved, and basically the whole premise of the first season is him trying to basically rise to the ranks of the gladiator school, or the Ludus as it's called, and so he can become reunited with his wife. So basically the whole first season is all about the politics, rival gladiator schools, and that kind of stuff. The Lunista, the head of the school, played by John Hannah, who people who were fans of the Mummy movies will know he was the idiot brother from those movies. But he is an awesome villain in this show. He is just like you can't get enough of him. He's awesome. Like he's just chewing up scenery constantly. He's such a horrible person, but the kind of horrible person you can't help but root for. Like he would if he is on Game of Thrones, he would have been a damn good player of the Game of Thrones if he was on that show. But basically his whole thing is where he wants to basically become a noble, a senator at some point. And while he comes from a respectable family, he's not a noble family. So there's a lot of people who are constantly trying to constantly hating on him because he has such high ambitions. But yeah, he pretty much doesn't give a shit who gets in his way, and just watching him just scheme and plan and just occasionally straight up murder people, it's awesome. Like he's probably the best thing about the first season. But that now, in the later seasons, obviously, is when the rebellion gets into full swing, and there's a lot more emphasis on action, and a lot of people will say the show goes downhill after the first season. And again, that's another thing I could go with, though I still enjoy the show. Now, aside from John Hare and the two other actors, the two titular actors, there's also Lucy Lawless plays a pretty big role. She's another horrible person, only unlike Badass. He's Badass's wife. Badass is the main character played by John Henner, but she's his wife, Lucretia. She is just a horrible person. You hate her just as much as you hate Cersei from Game of Thrones. And also one of the other gladiators who eventually becomes a rebel is Crixus, played by Manu Bennett, who's probably the only other one of the other noble actors on the show. He's currently an Australian actor. He currently plays what's his name? Deathstroke on Arrow. And Peter Mensah, who's an African actor who's played a number of stuff. He was actually the guy that Leonidas kicked into the pit in 300. He plays the former gladiator turned trainer, or a Doctore, as they call him. He's another really awesome character. And there are a number of other characters. Those are probably all the big characters. And they introduce other characters as the show goes on. Yeah, the special effects on this show. All right, the first season has some problems with the visual effects department. Because they only had so much budget to work with. But yeah, there is a lot of digital stuff on it, but there also is surprisingly good practical stuff too. There is a lot of CGI blood. In fact, if I were to compare this, if I were to describe this show in a nutshell, I'd basically say it's Gladiator mixed with 300 and turned into a TV show. But I actually think it takes the best elements of both those movies and kind of in my opinion, I kind of enjoy the show more than I enjoy both those other movies. Those are both still good movies, but like I said, I think this show takes the best of both those movies. Like I said, the budget, especially in the first season, is not that high. The CGI bloods can get a little. It definitely doesn't look, especially in the first season, does not look that good, and they probably use a little too much of it. But yeah, and also the show isn't actually as digital as it looks at first glance. Too, the slow motion that's actually done with what's called a phantom camera, I believe. Yeah, phantom camera. And the design knowledge is this is the only show that actually uses one of those things. So it's kind of like bullet time, maybe not quite as slow. But yeah, so but basically it gives the impression that it looks digital when you see one of those phantom camera shots, but it's not, except for the background, obviously. But there's a lot of blue screen still. But the fight choreography in this show is actually pretty awesome too. Like, I rewatched Gladiator after watching the first couple seasons of this show, and was shocked at just how much quick cutting and shaky cam there was during the fight scenes in Gladiator. Not all, like, the Gladiator is still a good movie, but there's almost never a point in all the action scenes on Spartacus where I couldn't tell what was going on or who was who. Like, you gotta give credit to the fight choreographers and the stunt team who put this show together. And also, there's some pretty epic, especially in the last couple of seasons, there's some pretty epic action scenes that happen from time to time. Like, the final battle, I'm not going to go into too much spoiler territory, but the final battle in the last episode, that is on par with both the Battle of Blackwater and the Battle on the Wall from Game of Thrones. Like, those two, like, as far as the epic television battles go. Now, still not quite on the level of, like, a big budget movie, but again, considering the budget they had, it's a damn good. It's pretty damn good. So, yeah, the showrunner for Spartacus was Stephen S. Knight, who's actually a really cool guy. I listened to some of the commentaries on the Blu-rays for some of the episodes. He's actually a really fun guy to listen to. He was actually going to be working on the new Daredevil show on Netflix. I think maybe possibly some of the other Netflix Marvel shows. I'm not sure. He was going to do this sci-fi war show called Incursion. He had plans to do that. It doesn't look like that's gonna happen anytime soon now that he's signed on to Daredevil. But at least, like I said, at least he's doing something. I'm glad. This is. I think he made a mistake. I will say. I mean, as much as I'm not bothered by the exploitation part of this show, but I think he made a mistake by going a little too hardcore with the sex. Because the show is, like I said, the show is not for everyone. It's not for the faint of heart. If they toned it down a little bit, they could have made it more accessible to more people, and it probably could have gotten better ratings. But having said that, though, it's also I believe it's the only show on Starz to actually finish its run. Like, there are a couple other shows, like Magic City and Boss. I heard a lot of good things about, but were canceled after 2 seasons on Starz. Right now, there's the show Black Seal, the pirate show, which is pretty good. It's pretty good. I've not really watched too much, but hopefully that show will keep going, and Starz will be able to get on the bandwagon with all the other networks. But yeah, but yes. So I'm looking forward to seeing the new Daredevil show, and I really hope that the Knight does eventually do that sci-fi show, because there's still a lot of good sci-fi shows, but not enough space operas anymore. I'd like to see another space opera. But so yeah, anyway, so Spartacus, yeah, I think it's a really good show. It's got some problems. It's not for everyone, especially if you're really the sex really does get borderline pornographic, and the gore is, like, really in your face to the point where it defies realism at times. So if you have a problem with that kind of stuff, then yeah, even despite that, I'd still give the show a watch, because it is for what it is really, really well made and really well written. Just it's really, I think about it's really far better than it has any right to be, and it really is kind of a shame that this didn't get more attention. Yeah, I strongly recommend you check it out, and yeah. So yeah, this is my first review. So I'm told that the more you do this kind of stuff, the easier it gets, and the better you get at it. So hopefully in future reviews I'll be more charismatic. Now, if you have any comments about how I did the review, or what you thought of Spartacus if you've seen it, go ahead and leave them. You know the drill. And hopefully this will be the first of many reviews to come. All right, so.